The Guardians of the Galaxy are fan favorites among Marvel fans, and perhaps none of the characters are more lovable than Groot.
I am Groot.
I mean, Rocket is entertaining, Gamora's pretty badass, and I personally find Drax hilarious.
I have sensitive nipples.
But the beauty of Groot is in the character's simplicity. The first installment of the character sacrificed himself for the greater good in the very first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, but then a new version of Groot grew up before our eyes in Volume 2. By Infinity War, he was a full-fledged teenager. He's essentially a sentient tree, only doesn't seem to speak any language. Throughout every appearance in the MCU, Groot's verbal skills are extremely limited.
Repeat back what I just said.
I am Groot.
All he can really say is, I am Groot.
I'm Groot.
Yeah, you said that.
While that's a true statement, it's not always the right reply to every single situation. Still, certain characters somehow understand him as if he was talking in full sentences. Which begs the question, is he actually only saying those 3 words, or do they actually mean something much deeper?
So his vocabularistics is limited to I and am and Groot.
After some careful observation and in-depth research, I've come to the conclusion that Groot is indeed saying a lot more than just I am Groot. For example, Rocket Raccoon is his closest ally. The pair are like family to one another, and they appear to communicate fully. Peter Quill also understands him, but I believe it's common knowledge that he has a universal translator installed in his ear. So he would theoretically understand anyone. However, over time, the rest of the Guardians of the Galaxy start to develop an understanding of Groot. Perhaps it takes time to fully grasp the intricacies of this language.
I'm Groot.
After all, it's not like the sentence I am Groot is said with the same intonation or emphasis each time. He does switch it up and delivers the line with different emotions. Rather than a language, maybe it's more similar to how a dog barks.
Rough? Yeah, I don't know. You've been pitching that all night.
It's not like dogs have specific words that they use to speak to one another.
You know where is it, a cat?
It's more about the tone of their bark and how loud or aggressive it is, and that's how they're able to communicate. But I don't think that's how Groot works. It just wouldn't make sense. The other characters respond to him as though he's speaking in full sentences, so they must actually understand him. He must be saying tangible words or phrases, just in some kind of distinct dialect. Perhaps the most interesting example is Thor. When he meets Groot in Avengers Infinity War, the pair hit it off right away. When they first meet, Thor can totally understand him right off the bat.
You speak Groot?
Yes, the total on Asgard. It was an elective.
So it is a language. Why they teach it as an elective in Asgard is a question I will probably never have the answer to, but they teach it nonetheless. There had to have been lessons with, tests, presumably. Come to think of it, Thor: The College Days would be such a good movie. Like something between Ragnarok and Van Wilder. I would love to see what the typical Asgardian college experience is like. The fact that they haven't made that movie yet is a major letdown. But let's get back to this whole Groot language theory. So we've established it's certainly a language, but does it have its own vocabulary and lexicon? How intricate is this way of communicating? Groot is most likely smarter than a dog. Probably. So we've established that a slew of other English-speaking characters are able to communicate with Groot. This implies that he understands English, but replies in Groot. It's similar to how people who speak different languages are able to communicate with one another. Like, I can totally understand someone speaking in French, but I'll respond in English, and I could have a full-blown conversation. At least, I think we are. There's no way to be sure, I guess. What's really questionable is when, at the end of the original Guardians of the Galaxy movie, Groot manages to utter the sentence, "We are Groot." What the? That totally debunks literally everything. They can't just throw a wrench in the system like that. We're just coming to terms with I am Groot, and scratching the surface of understanding what that means. Now all of a sudden he can say some other stuff? That's absurd. I get that it's a nice sentiment, but come on, Marvel. You gotta give us something to work with here. I wonder if they taught that one in Thor's classroom. Also, if the language is Groot,
I am Groot.
and all he can say is Groot,
I am Groot.
then why in the world would he also be able to say two random arbitrary words like I am or we are?
I'm Groot.
Yeah, you said that.
I can understand it if he could only say the one word, but adding random qualifiers makes very little sense and is one of the reasons that I struggle to fall asleep every night. Does Groot follow the same rules as like the Smurfs? Remember that weird cartoon with the little blue people in white hats? They spoke normally, only they replaced pretty much every noun, adverb, and adjective with the word Smurf.
All work and no Smurf makes Smurf a very dull Smurf.
It would be like, hey, did you catch the Smurf yesterday? Yeah, it was Smurfin' awesome. Or maybe it's more like Pokemon.
Huh? Pika! Pika!
Most of the Pokemon in that universe can simply say their names, but they manage to communicate regardless. Pikachu is a prime example. If you've seen the movie Detective Pikachu, then you saw the odd phenomenon where Ash could completely understand every word the cuddly little guy was saying, but to everyone else, it just sounded like he was repeating his name.
You can hear him, right?
Pika! Pika!
Yeah. Pika, pika, pika.
It's possible that Groot functions in the same manner. Rocket can understand Groot, but not everyone can.
That's why you don't like hats?
This is an important conversation right now.
There's even moments outside of the MCU where the Groot language makes a fun little cameo. Take Wreck-It Ralph 2, for example, where the internet appears to understand Groot.
What is Drax really like?
I am Groot.
Thank you.
That means there's several people out there in several different realities who are familiar with the language. Another theory is that Groot is not just a language, but it's also his name. You may think that his name is just Groot, but it appears as though his name is actually Tree. When Thor introduces him to Captain America, he introduces him as Tree.
Oh, by the way, this is a friend of mine, Tree.
Sure, Thor might just be calling it how he sees it, the same way that he refers to Rocket as Rabbit, but I believe this is actually Thor being respectful and correct. After all, he's well versed in Groot and knows a thing or two about the culture. The Dwarf King Eitri also refers to Groot as Tree when they meet,
Tree! Help me find the handler!
further solidifying the notion that that's his name. It would stand to reason that his full official name on his birth certificate or whatever is Groot Tree. In fact, if you watch Avengers Infinity War with subtitles, they capitalize Tree, implying that it's a proper noun. The word tree, simply referring to the tall things with leaves on them, would not be capitalized. A name, however, would be. What's fascinating is that Groot is also the name of his species. His name is Groot, he speaks Groot, and he's also a Groot. He isn't a one-of-one special case. There's an entire species of space creatures just like him. It's sort of like Wookiees in Star Wars. We all know and love Chewbacca, but he's actually one of many just like him. So Groot is the name of the language,
I am Groot.
the primary word in said language,
I am Groot.
the name of the species,
I am Groot.
as well as this character's last name,
I am Groot.
or at least part of his name.
I am Groot.
That's a pretty multifunctional word. Before we wrap this thing up, let's go over a quick crash course so that you too can speak Groot fluently. If you're ever in a bind and need to know some important phrases, just refer back to this video and check this simple guide and you should be alright. So for starters, if you need to say thank you, just say, I am Groot.
I am Groot.
If you want to say excuse me, the correct pronunciation is I am Groot.
I am Groot.
If you'd like to tell someone nice to meet you, you should say to them, I am Groot.
I am Groot.
And if you want to ask someone where the nearest bathroom is, just say to them, I am Groot.
I am Groot.
Hopefully that helps. Well, what are your thoughts on the Groot language? Do you think it's his name, the name of the language, the name of the species, or something else entirely? Or all of the above? Leave us a comment in the section down below so that we can hear your thoughts. Before you go, make sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to Behind the Screen to stay up to date on all of our latest and greatest video releases. Until next time, bye!